Hey, what's up guys, how's it going? So, Sega. It's no secret that during the early 2000s, Sega was struggling bad. With the Dreamcast being dead and them porting their games to the competition's hardware, it wasn't really looking good for Sega. I mean, just think about it for a second. With Sega beefing with Nintendo since like the late 80s and the 90s, isn't it kind of weird that they kind of ported everything to like the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance? Like, fuck, dude, that, like, Nintendo was, like, the main villain against Sega, and yet Sega was, like, porting everything to the GameCube and the Game Boy Advance. And now, with Sega porting some of their games to the GameCube and the GBA, let's talk about it, specifically the Game Boy ports. Now, I'll be honest, some of them are good, some of them are absolute hot garbage, but we're gonna be talking about it all today. So, I guess, enough bullshit, let's just get started.
Hello, I am Rolf. And where I come from, we don't have Cartoon Fridays. Instead, we have Grease the Porcupine Thursdays. Oh, it is much fun. But not as much fun as Cartoon Fridays, which will be right back after this capitalist propaganda.
Gotta go.
Hey, guy, you're the first serious gamer I've seen all morning. Check this out. Brand new 16-bit Super Nintendo with Super Mario World. Wow!
Oh, what's this one?
Oh, this is a Sonic the Hedgehog from Sega Genesis. Hey, look at these radical colors, huh?
Wow, Sonic's fast, too.
No, over here.
I like Genesis, and it costs a lot less.
Wait, kid, that game
I'll
there.
take Sonic and Genesis.
I knew that.
Sonic the Hedgehog. More action, more speed. Sega Genesis, it's a whole lot more for less.
Hello, this is Ed.
Ed.
And Freddy. Freddy!
Stay tuned for more Cartoon Fridays.
Don't we hear Scooby-Doo enough? You gotta take over Cartoon Fridays, too?
So, Comic Zone, a really dope game for the Sega Genesis, and there's also a port for the Game Boy Advance. Unfortunately, though, it is PAL only, but that doesn't necessarily matter since, you know, the Game Boy Advance is like region free. Either we're getting off the topic, Comic Zone, a really, really dope game. I can't emphasize that enough. So basically, you play in a comic book, and this is a really, really dope concept. Anyway, it kind of has a basic story. You're basically a comic book creator, and of course, you're writing a comic book. The villain drops you into the comic book, and of course, you know, you got to get out because the villain is trying to become a real person. Extreme basic story, but other than that, the game looks beautiful. Now, I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of a Streets of Rage clone, but I would say it kind of does its own thing. Like, as you go through comic panels, you actually, you know, have choices. You could either go up, down, left, or right. But yeah, it's a really dope game, and I'm honestly surprised it's playable on the Game Boy Advance.
The Sega Genesis has blast processing. Super Nintendo doesn't. So what's blast processing do? What if you don't have blast processing?
Okay, now this one's a bit of a weird one. It's obviously a game compilation, and it's basically a bunch of Sega arcade games like Afterburner, Outrun, Space Harrier, you get the idea. And there's honestly really not much to say. Honestly, it's just convenient having those games on the Game Boy Advance. Anyway though, are they the best ports? Most likely not, since it's running on a GBA, but still. So the Phantasy Star Collection, oddly enough, a really good port to the Game Boy Advance. Of course, it's the first 3 Phantasy Star games, and honestly, it's not really my cup of tea, but it honestly looks cool. I don't know, playing this on the go like while you're like at work or like on your train or a bus, it sounds honestly kind of comforting in a weird way, just like chilling out like playing an RPG. So Altered Beast, obviously a classic for the Sega Genesis, a classic for the arcade, but not so good for the Game Boy Advance. I mean, it's still decent, but it definitely has its quirks and features. Like, not gonna lie, the levels go on for way too long. You don't really get any power-ups. This overall isn't really a good port, but hey, that's just my perspective. So, Shining Force Resurrection. Now, obviously this game isn't really my cup of tea, but believe it or not, the GBA port is actually better than the Genesis version. Like, they updated the graphics, better characters, better dialogue, and I'm honestly surprised. Because it seems like Sega has like a wavy track record when it comes to the Game Boy Advance. They can either like drop bangers like Gunstar Superheroes or drop hot garbage like Sonic the Hedgehog. But yeah, surprisingly enough, this gem kind of stands out. So last and certainly least, we have this piece of dog shit. Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis for the Game Boy Advance. Where the fuck do I start? First off, the music. I think we all know what Green Hill sounds like. And to definitely understand that there's going to be some, compression since it's on the Game Boy Advance. I completely understand that. But they completely botched it. It sounds nothing like the original. Same thing with the sound effects. And the gameplay is garbage. I mean, this game has to be the worst of talking about today. Do I recommend it? No. Buy Sega Genesis, buy the original cartridge, or play it on emulator. Whatever you want to do, just don't play the Game Boy Advance version. That's all I'm asking. So ladies and gents, I hope you had fun today. I just want to talk about a few Genesis games that landed on the GBA. And I guess, yeah, if you want to, like, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and if you want to, I guess tell me your favorite Sega Genesis games down in the comments. I'll see you guys later. Peace.
Hey, how are you doing? Hit me up if you would like to chat. I found you on Snapchat Maps.